Who said this was okay?
Why is the door open? Close the door!
Did you say this was okay?
It's cold. Close the door.
I don't care. But why is it snowing? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Welcome back to the vlog. Today we're going to be working on some shocks. They're actually some coilovers from Kyle up at Boostedboiz. We were up there last week with our rig on the dyno, and Kyle's shocks need some work. He blew one up and they just need an overhaul and gone through. But first, I actually got to get to the shop. Mother Nature decided to hit us with a blizzard out of nowhere, and it's finally starting to die down a little bit, but this is some cold, wet snow. Alrighty, so we are back, and like I said, we're going to be working on some shocks tonight. Both the shocks for Boostedboiz Razzle Dazzle buggy, and then Joe is going to pull the shocks off Corey's. It's the solid axle Ultra 4 car. We're doing some changes on that, including new shocks on both the front and the rear. So we got to pull those off. There they are. I guess. Where are you going?
I'm going to the table.
Okay.
Move it all over there. They're not doing it over there.
And as you can see, if you watch the Boostedboiz channel, they were out jumping it and the shock blew apart. And we were up there on the dyno last week, so we picked them up, brought them back, and we are going to go through them right now. These are some older sway away coilovers. And a coilover, as you can see, is a shock with the coil on the shock. And then it has a dual rate slider. And then typically you have a lighter spring on the top and heavier spring on the bottom. And then you have your dual rate stoppers here to transition between the two. These things are definitely well used, and we're probably going to clean up these springs and maybe paint them as well. But the shocks, we're going to pull them apart, check everything out, and we're going to change the reservoirs out to an adjustable reservoir. And on the shocks, we're going to get all this cleaned up and probably coat them and steel it. And then the tops, they're not in bad shape, so we'll clean these up, probably polish them, and just give them a complete overhaul through the entire thing. So let's get to work. This thing is pretty beat up, but it's not beyond repair. So use a little heat to get the hose off and break some of the thread sealant Loctite that was on the fitting. We actually may use this fitting with the new reservoir, but we'll re-Loctite it all, clean it up on that. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look. So first and foremost, we're probably not going to use the same reservoir. We're going to put an adjustable reservoir on there that we make, because that'll give him a little better tunability on it. And it's super easy to put that on here. As a matter of fact, I think the threads are the same size that we use, so it may go right on. But the first thing I want to do on the inside of the shock is look at the piston, all the seal. Joe's up there working on some other shocks. We're going to go through the valving, which at face value doesn't look really bad. These things have not been in here too long. Look at the wear band and see what's going on with all this. We were being very careful when you take it apart not to get any nicks in the shaft. That's the worst thing, because if you do, it'll actually destroy the seal inside the seal head. But as a whole, everything's not too bad inside here. And like I said, you can definitely tell it's been used. The rate plate is a little bent there, but not bad. So inside we have the seal head, we have a rubber stopper, then we have the rate plate. Why is that on top of there? This is really weird. So generally your rate plate should be, so the whole deal here with yours, man, that doesn't want to move on there very well. That is really strange. Might take that out. There's no purpose for it on the inside other than to keep from damaging the seal head. But basically this rate plate should actually be, well, that's not a rate plate, that's just a washer on there. Huh, okay. These are a little different. So there is a rate plate. I don't know if you can see it here. So the way a shock works is, that focus on there. This is your piston here, and then inside you have all these shim steer. And you have them for both the compression and the rebound. And then on this side here, we have what's called a rate plate. And this, if you can kind of see in there, I don't know if it'll focus that tight. But basically, you can see there's a little bit of a gap there between the shims and that plate. And that's basically the ultimate stopper. It's a big shim. So when the valving bends down, it has something hard to sit against so it doesn't blow the valving open. And when we're rebuilding shocks, we have a special vise just for shocks. This actually has, we make these spacers for it in here, and it's made out of a UHMPE material. It's a plastic material, kind of like cutting board material, and that prevents any scratches, and it allows a really nice tight squeeze on the shock without having to put a towel or something in the vise itself, and just really works great. So let's go ahead and get this thing apart and look at this valving. So as you can see here, we have all the interior components of the shock laid out in front of us here. This is for inspection and documentation. We have all the valving for the compression and rebound. We have the bump stop. This goes on the end of the shock shaft, acts as a bump stop. We have the piston, get that cleaned up. We have the wear band, the dust cover. Then we have the actual seal head assembly itself. We'll go through and inspect all of this. So now we're going to go through and we're going to measure the thickness as well as the diameter of all the valving using a micrometer and a caliper. This will help us to know what's in the shock for future tuning purposes. So now that we have all our shims measured and we know the sizes for the rebound and compression, I like to soak them in brake clean or some kind of a cleaner. Brake clean just really works the best because it gets all the gunk and anything off it, and then once they're clean we can actually examine the shims and make sure there's no fractures or bends. If anything needs to be replaced, we can do it at this time, but at this point everything looks pretty normal for what he's doing with it, but we'll see once everything's cleaned off. So now we're going to go through the actual piston, clean up the seal head, the dust housing, and just go through everything, clean it, inspect the seals, and see how it is. Okay, so at this time we have gone through all the different parts of the shock now. We've inspected everything, cleaned up some stuff. Overall, it's not in too bad a shape as far as the insides go. The valving looks good, so we're going to keep that valving. And then we've put a new seal inside the seal head, which that's a little tricky. But now we're going to start to put it all back together. And then one thing to always, a lot of people don't really address this, but one thing you got to be careful about when you're dealing with O-rings and like your seal head and seals, never use tools to get in there and just dig stuff out, because what ends up happening is you scratch things up, and you can actually create what's called blow-by, especially like if you're dealing with the IFP inside the reservoir and your gas and oil can mix. So be very careful, and most of the time, honestly, you can just squeeze them and they'll pop right off by hand. So always be gentle and just remember that all this stuff is holding pressure and you don't want to destroy it, and any little scratch or nick can allow it to push past it and not do its job. So now we're going to put everything back together, and we've got some new O-rings here. One thing you want to do is lube your O-rings. We use a specific lube here from the Parker's hydraulic store. It's actually made for O-rings. This keeps the O-rings from expanding, and it just allows everything to slide together very, very well. So you just need a little bit on there. And this stuff is very gooey. So cover the O-ring completely. And then if you do it right, this is the O-ring for the wear band. You should be able to just simply put it on and roll it right over without any damage. And it's quite all right if you get grease on there. You can wipe some of that off. Little grease doesn't hurt anything. And lastly, we have an O-ring for the seal head we need to put on the outside. So we'll go ahead and grease that up. And we'll go ahead, and again, just being gently over the edges, it should just roll right on. There we go. I'm going to wipe off some of the extra here. Like I said, low grease doesn't go, but you don't need a ton in there. All right, the other thing, as I was saying, we did inspect the shaft. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. There's no noticeable dings, scratches, and it's not bent. So this will be fine to go ahead and go back in. For what he's doing with this, he's not racing on it, and it's not a trophy truck beating through the desert in Ultra 4. So for a toy, all this stuff is going to be fine for him. I mean, you can literally go through and replace every part if you want to. We're looking at the dust cap. It's fine. It's got a new seal in there. So we're also going to lube that up as well. Any part that is rubber or Vitone, however you pronounce that, and it's going to slide over something, you want to make sure it's lubed up so nothing catches and it's all happy. Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to the actual shock body itself. It's pretty dirty and corroded, so I've got to decide what we're going to do on that, if we can clean it up, and we'll take a look at that next.
Hey, what's up? I'll show you what guys I've been working on while Daniel's been cleaning up the shocks. I've actually been working on the ones for Big Bear Off-Road's rig, and there they are right there. Well, 3 of them anyway. And over here, I have 1 left. So this all slammed out now because there's absolutely no suspension left to hold the back of that up. And full droop up here so I can get these coilovers off of here. Got 1 more bolt to go, and that guy is out. All right, got it out. That one was definitely in there, but yeah, reservoir's out, and we're gonna go put this with the rest of them and then get ready to disassemble. Dude, that looks disgusting. What are you doing?
I'm working on the rust. There's a lot of rust on this shock body, and these guys are actually seized, so I'm using a rust remover. See if this can pull it off. We for some shocks, it just depends how they're manufactured. We can use the rust-oleum rust remover, and this is the gel. Yeah, that stuff. This shock is really, it's really old. The fact that it even rusted, most of these they shouldn't be able to rust, but obviously the coating is off it. So we're gonna clean it as best as possible, and like I said, if we can, we may coat it in a black steelite, but it just depends on how it's all gonna clean up and what's gonna happen. So first thing we do is coat it, and we're gonna let it sit for about 10-15 minutes and then rinse it off, and we'll see what happens. So fun. Well, that is much better. A little bit of that rust remover, some brake clean, and then we scrubbed it with some hot soapy water. So it's definitely got a lot of that off there. There's a lot of oxidation in there you just can't get rid of, so you just got to kind of deal with that. So we're actually going to now use a torch. Use this to heat it up a little bit and make sure that any of the last remaining moisture is evaporated. And then we're going to tape it up, go ahead and coat it with some steelite, and it's going to look like a totally different shock. We were also able to break free the dual rate stoppers, and we pulled everything off it now, so a lot of threads are cleaned up and ready to go. Alrighty, so Joe is actually, I went ahead and let him paint the body, and now he's going through in some of these parts, adding some aluminum polish just to clean them up a little bit so they look a little bit better. And then the dust cap there, you can see it's looking better now. And then now I've got, these are the reservoirs we're going to be using. It's a fin reservoir with a compression adjuster, so now he has 20 stops of adjustment. So now he can stiffen or soften the way the car rides with the click of a knob. And the cool thing is the existing hose that he has on there, clean that up a little bit. I'll throw some polish on there, but we already have the right size threads matching. So we'll be able to thread this in, put some thread sealer on there, tighten it down, and this will be good to go. A little bit of loctite. thread her in, tighten her down. You look so serious. Oh, we've had a long night tonight. All right, kind of got some stuff cleaned up. I went ahead and put the reservoir on the hose. We got it hooked up here. Everything lined up perfectly, so super happy with that. The first thing we're gonna do before we do anything is with our reservoirs, different situations call for different placement of the internal floating piston. And what that is, inside this reservoir, there's a piston that moves back and forth. And on this side, we have the fluid in the shock, and on this side, we have the nitrogen. And you can set this at different depths, and it'll determine how much fluid is in the shock. For this purpose, we're gonna charge this up so it seats the IFP all the way at the bottom. Joe!
What?
Battery died. We set our charge to 200 PSI. Okay. Close that. Okay. So now we know that because of the pressure, the IFP is set all the way at the bottom. So now we're going to start assembling the shock assembly. So I've got the shims. I have everything laid out the way it goes on. So we'll put it together. And we've got our lube on there. Just going to put one more little dab on the dust cap for the wiper seal. And this seal here, the wiper seal on the dust cap, doesn't actually hold pressure. This simply is cleaning the shaft so it keeps dust and dirt off the main seal. All right, so we got that. So next up, we'll have our seal head. We want to be gentle with that, especially with a fresh seal. There we go. Okay. Next, we'll put our bumper on. Okay. This one's easy. Whee! Nice. No, we got that. All right. Cool. Now we start putting our shim stack together. Right the way it came. We inspected all our shims. They all look good. And ultimately, there's things you can do to change the ride, but we want to leave it just as it was because he said he felt good. And again, this is not a race application. So we will leave it as is. Got our piston on. Now we'll put these guys on there. Okay. And last but not least, we have our nut, which you want to use red Loctite on.
Not that one.
Okay. Okay, so we'll tighten that. Okay, now that we have the shaft assembled and everything back in its place, the way the OEM manufactured it, we can start to do the last part of putting it back in the shock. So first thing we're gonna do, since we have our IFP set, is we're gonna go ahead and use our oil. We use a specific hydraulic oil that we buy in bulk and cut it down. Okay, so as far as oil level, every shot's gonna be a little different. My general rule of thumb is this. Your seal head is going to displace fluid. Obviously your shaft, your piston, everything in here's gotta go in there where your fluid is. So what I am going to do is measure the thickness of our seal head, the whole stack here. Get that 0. Okay. And so it's about 1.8 inches. So we want to be about 1.8 inches. So let's get a tape measure, measure our current level and see where we're at. Okay, so with our IFP all the way set down, oh wow, we're actually right on. Pretty close to 1.875. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and put the assembly back in the shock. And you want to wiggle a little bit as you go in because it can create some air pockets. Not as much on a regular shock. So, okay, cool. So we got that in there now. The next thing we're going to do, because again, we're displacing fluid, we want to open the schrader valve on the shock so the IFP can seat properly. Okay. And typically what will happen is the IFP will slide in as far as the distance we measured. Okay, so we got that now. Oh man, that thing's... And not gonna lie, you're always gonna make a mess. So you can zip tie towels around it. Okay, there we go.
Or you can have a Joe on the side to wipe it down.
And this just pushes in. You can feel it, and you'll hear the IFP moving. Okay. So inside here, there's a snap ring. And you don't have to force it. You should be able to push it down by hand. And lastly, we'll put the snap ring in. Okay, always make sure that's in. Okay, so now that we have that in, we need to put our schrader back together. And sometimes people just pull the end of the reservoir off. You can pull the schrader, inner schrader out, the schrader valve itself. There's any number of things you can do. Basically, you just want to be able to relieve the pressure back. You don't want it to be fighting. Okay. So, now we should be able to push this all the way down. That red looks pretty with the black. You like that, Joe?
Yeah, that does look really good.
Okay, I'm just gonna wipe that off. So now, oh my goodness. There we go. Okay, just checking that. So now I'm going to pressurize the reservoir with the nitrogen. Okay. So we'll put our dust cap back on now. Every shock is going to have little differences and little nuances. Some shocks, they don't have the bolts up here. Different shocks are set up a little different. So this is basically how we do it. And you just kind of learn a little bit and do each one a little differently. The biggest thing is making sure you get air out of the shock. Obviously, if you're using a bypass shock, you've got to work with it to get the air out in all the bypass tubes. Make everything happy. Don't damage your seals. Don't damage your shafts. Don't want to ding it. And make sure you use lube. And a surefire way to know that you have the air out of the shock and everything's set properly, just again, there's just general, is you should have no. See, if there was air and you push down on this, you would feel it kind of push down and stay there. But because it's full extension, it can move a little bit. It's not a problem. And that's how you rebuild the shock. So we kind of just wanted to go through one of these with you. Going through all of them definitely takes time, but you get the gist of it. So we're basically going to repeat this process on all 4. And then we're talking about the springs, if we're going to powder coat them, or honestly what we're going to do with them, because they're pretty rough. We might just clean this paint off them and possibly hit them. Krylon is a really good paint for springs. I don't know what it is about it, but it sticks and holds up really well to the spring compressing and moving. Before, a little rough, older reservoir, non-adjustable, and after, new oil, cleaned up, fully adjustable reservoir, all blacked out, looking dope. That looks good. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I know Kyle's gonna like it because he's gonna have some super clean shocks, and this car is so slammed out now. I love it, man. It's a few inches off the ground. What are you doing?
It's cold out there.
It's very cold. But do you think it'd be cool to have this car at this actual ride height just for, like, go do some rally racing or something? Or
Be a pretty rough ride.
Okay, everybody, I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. It's really cool to see these shocks turn around. Now, just kind of an asterisk, everybody has their own techniques, their own methods, and ways of doing things. This is just how we do it, what we found has worked, and what has been successful for us through what we do. So, if you like this video, make sure you give us a big thumbs up. Leave us some comments down below. And with that, it's cold out here, so I feel like doing a giveaway. You want to do a giveaway?
We can do a giveaway.
Heck yeah. You want one of these beanies to keep your head warm? Leave a comment down below that you want a beanie and you like this video or something else. Just make sure it says beanie in the comment, and we'll just choose somebody at random, and I'll send you a beanie to keep your head warm. These are handmade with the Olympus logo. They'll keep you warm. So if you're not subscribed, like I said, get subscribed. We do giveaways every 500 subscribers. We've done like 7 of them in the last week. Was
I know,
it 7?
right? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was like 7 of them. And we're coming up on 7,500 subscribers, somewhere around there. So make sure you get in on that. We're going to get rolling. Hope everyone out there is staying healthy. We're going to keep the content coming, and we'll see you guys next time. Fist bump for you, fist bump for you.